If I was to die tomorrow, I would like to leave a legacy that through forgiveness, peace is possible. That's been true in my own life. I lost my son 23 years ago to a 14-year-old gang member in a senseless gang initiation ritual. But sometimes in deep tragedy there is a spark of clarity. Every saint has suffered the dark night of the soul. But the spark of clarity in my tragedy was that I was able to see that there are victims at both ends of the gun. So I ended up forgiving him and partnering with his grandfather to make sure other young people in our community don't end up in prison like he did or end up dead like my son. But at that time I did not know all that has manifested in my life. The work that I have done in the last 23 years in the name of my son in the Khamisa Foundation has been extremely fulfilling, given over 1,000 presentations to over 1 million kids, teaching the principles of nonviolence and peacemaking. And I just recently finished a trilogy From Fulfillment to Peace. And the kid who killed my son wrote the foreword to it and did a great job. He's still in prison, but we're looking forward to him joining us next year. He goes into the parole board in November. He studied all of the scriptures. He's 12 units away from his degree in child psychology. And I know he wants to turn the clock back. And I think that when he joins us and he shares his testimony with the students, because we reach a lot of students every year, and tells them that when he was 11, he joined a gang. When he was 14, when he was 14, he killed my son, and that he spent the last umpteen years in prison, that he wishes he can turn the clock back. So we've saved him, but he will save tens of thousands of students that were thinking about following in his former footsteps. So the message I would like to leave the world, that through forgiveness we can get to peace. I am at peace, at a level of peace I never had before. That hopefully more people can really get that forgiveness is something that can create peace within themselves, peace within their families, peace within their communities, and more importantly, peace within their world.
I grew up in South Central Los Angeles, where my mother attempted to raise me the best way she could with her extended family. My relationship with my father was poor, to say the least. And at that time in my life, I felt that my relationship with the world was uncertain. I grew up in a high gang, high crime neighborhood where I learned my ABCs along with the survival skills I would need to navigate the wilderness of South Central Los Angeles, as well as my future. Before I was emotionally prepared to deal with anything like death, I had confronted or been confronted with the violent gang slaying of several family members. Those losses and other struggles fed the feelings of uncertainty about the world in which I lived in. My mother, after several attempts to move me away from that neighborhood and that environment, sent me to live with her father in San Diego. Although my grandfather loved me greatly and tried to provide a home for me, I still struggle with the challenges that I carry with me from my upbringing in Los Angeles. I made a steady flow of bad decisions. I was failing school, I associated with the wrong people, and was smoking marijuana and drinking alcohol as a coping mechanism. This culminated in my running away from my grandfather's home when I was 14 years old. I had joined a gang by that time, and I ran to them for guidance and security. My 14-year-old brain and heart saw family in these young lost boys like myself. The night that I had ran away from home, we conspired to call a pizza restaurant in order to rob the delivery man for his money and his pizza. We have been smoking marijuana all day and drinking, verbalizing our boredom and frustration and our willingness to create chaos for the gang. Listening to my 18-year-old gang leader, I played the role that I agreed on. I would do anything at that time to stay in the good graces of these young men. I had put so much hope in my relationship with them because I felt like my relationship with my family had fallen apart. I and another member were told to find a bogus address to send a delivery man to that would allow us to ambush him. No one spoke of hurting the pizza man, but we never spoke of or considered the possibility that anyone would be hurt. Not even after the four of us laid in wait across the street from the bogus address that we had provided the restaurant, waiting for the delivery guy to arrive. Not even when he pulled up into the driveway and began to search energetically for the address that didn't exist. Not even when the gun was handed to me and I walked across the street to the delivery man as he was placing the pizza back in the trunk of his car, and I raised a gun to his face and demanded in a small voice that he give me his pizza. Not even as he bravely defied me and slowly walked backwards to the driver's side of his vehicle. Not even as he rolled up his window to defy my presence. Or as I heard the order to shoot him. Not even as I killed Khamisa. At that moment, my life stood still, and Thaurik's life stopped. I would not consider the impact of my actions until long after Thaurik's family laid him to rest. And I was on my way to serving a life sentence in prison. It was my grandfather, whose home and love that I had run away from, and I had given very little reason to believe in me, that had continued to take his role in my life seriously. He understood the importance of me not allowing myself to be lost in the environment of prison and the whirlwind of negative emotions that existed within it. My grandfather met with Azim early after my arrest. A meeting that my young mind could not comprehend. It went against what I had believed made sense. I had killed Azim's son. And from everything I learned in my life, from television, stories, all said that this was not how this was supposed to play out. My grandfather had told me that Azim would like to meet me, but I didn't feel ready. I never knew if I would be ready. What do you say to someone whose son you murdered? I met with Azim in the visitor room of New Folsom. Approximately 5 years after I had murdered Tariq. I was reluctant and nervous. I was dealing with the difficulties of maturing on a prison yard and trying not to lose myself in that environment. And I did not feel myself succeeding. Azim and I had sat for nearly 8 hours in that visit. It was a difficult conversation. It was one filled with honesty and compassion. Azim forgave me in that first meeting. He offered me a position at the Khamisa Foundation upon my release. We began a decade-long correspondence in which he continued, along with my grandfather, to support me and keep me informed with the work of TKF. That initial visit impacted me in so many levels. One of the deepest, Azim's forgiveness, provided me with a small space within my mind and heart to begin the slow process of salvaging my humanity. Azim had walked me through the stages of restorative justice: accountability, empathy, and communication. Restorative justice is a philosophy that deals with repairing the harm that a perpetrator inflicts on the victim when it's possible, as well as repairing the harm that the perpetrator inflicts on the community. This is done through taking accountability for your actions, having empathy, and being willing to communicate to your victims if that's possible. Azim gave me a living example of the kind of forgiveness that you only hear about and the power of it. In 2019, I was released from prison at 39 years of age after serving 24 years and 3 months. I now work as a plumber in the greater San Diego area, and I'm proud to be a board member of the Khamisa Foundation. Volunteering and speaking with young people, sharing my story as much as possible in the hope that it will connect with someone in some way that is restorative. Thank you. Now, before we get into any questions and answers, if any of you have questions, Azim has another video that he would like to share with you.
So let me first apologize for not being there in person. I would love to have been there, but I have a conflict because I'm also speaking in Hawaii at the same time. So I wish you a good conference. I know you've already heard Tony and you've already seen my video. And what I'd like to do now is to essentially explain the tenets of restorative justice, the genesis of RJ, and how we are using this to not only resolve conflict in crime and in social work, but in any kind of altercation. So RJ comes from the Aboriginal cultures of New Zealand and Australia. But to understand RJ, we have to first understand our punitive system. Because the criminal code that we use in America and also in Mexico came originally from the Pilgrims. I know Mexico was colonized by Spain, and a lot of the early pilgrims that came to the US came from Europe, which are mostly monarchies. So in a monarchy, the king or the queen owns both the land and the people. So when there's a crime committed, it's always the king or the queen against the offender. We don't have monarchy in the United States or in Mexico, so the state takes the role of the monarchy. So in my case, it was the state of California against Tony Hicks, much like it happens in Mexico with the state or the federal government takes the role of the monarch. But RJ comes from a very different perspective. They say crime or altercation happen in community. The state may, be a facilitator, but they cannot be a direct party, because in any kind of a crime, there are three parties. There's the victim, there's the offender, and then there's community. And in their form of justice, justice is not delivered till the victim is made whole. We can't bring Tariq back. He's gone forever. But working with Tony's grandfather and now with Tony, less kids are ending up dead like my son or ending up in prison like Tony. That is meaningful to me and my family. So Tariq did not die in vain. The second part of RJ is to bring the offender back into society as a contributing and a functioning member. And as you witnessed, we've done that with Tony. So in the Aboriginal culture, when a youth offends, the whole village shows up, puts the youth in the middle of a circle, and everybody from the village says something positive about the youth's character and inspires the youth to make amends with the victims. Because they believe, which I also believe, that when an offender is held close to community, he is less likely to reoffend. What do? We lock them up and throw the key away. Very often, the youth that come out eventually, because most criminals do come out, are better criminals than when they went in. So I think this is a very important aspect, that to keep the offender close to community and making sure that they make the amends, make an apology, ask for forgiveness, whether it's granted or not is not the important issue, but at least they have to make the effort. And the third part is to heal the community, which is what we do at TKF. We reach tens of thousands of kids through the Tariq Khamisa Foundation every year. We are very often in schools. I am there, the grandfather is there, Tony often joins us, we speak at conferences, and as we are doing with you right now, we are healing the community. So as you see, the tenets of RJ are more human, more wholesome, more compassionate, and they build a better society. And as social workers, you deal with victims, you deal with offenders, you deal with a variety of altercations. You can take these principles that I have just shared with you and what you've heard from Tony to create love and unity from conflict, to create a brother like Tony's grandfather and me, or to create a sister, or to create a relationship like Tony is more like a son to me, and he's also very close to my daughter. They are like siblings. And it came from a very difficult and a devastating tragedy. But using these principles, we've created not only healing, we've created a better society. So I hope this was helpful, and I look forward to the next time you meet to be there in person. Thank you very much, and have a wonderful conference.
Hi, well, first of all, thank you for sharing. And my question is, what was your process of accountability, especially at that young age?
My process of accountability came from my interaction with Azim through my grandfather. I, like most human beings, basically, I did something wrong. I knew I had done something wrong, and I didn't want to take responsibility for it. I would have rather swept it under the rug or just got on with my life and not had to address it. But wanting to Give some kind of peace or some kind of closure to the family of Khamisa, and also wanting to heal my family who I had damaged in this process also. I thought taking accountability was the step that I needed to do in order to start that process.
¿Cómo es que tú compartes esta experiencia con otras personas a través de la fundación? O sea, ¿cómo llega la justicia restaurativa a más jóvenes que están en una situación vulnerable o que han cometido algún delito? O si es solo a jóvenes, es a través... ¿Cómo es el trabajo que realiza en la Fundación Tariq?
Through the Khamisa Foundation, we have several different mediums that we use in order to connect with kids. We go around the country, we do assemblies, we tell this story often. Azim and my grandfather was doing it while I were incarcerated. They would go around to assemblies, to schools all over America and some around the world, and they would share this story, and then they would ask questions of the kids about how they would act differently, what choices they think I could have made differently, and then as I go out and just sit and try to convey the importance of forgiveness, what I do is just speak to kids, speak my truth to kids, basically. But we also do circles. We also have books. We have comic books and other mediums in hopes of trying to get the idea of restorative justice out in as many ways as possible.
Thank you for presenting. What message do you give to teenagers? What do you think would help them, especially for teenagers that are at this age, starting to get involved in gangs?
For teenagers, right? The one thing I tell young people every time I talk, and the one thing I would like to pass on and stick with them is that no matter what the situation is that we go through, because we all go through stuff, there are people that care about us and there are people that are willing to help us. I had that in my life. I just didn't believe it because of the things that I was going through. I have teachers that still communicate with me now from when I was in middle school because they cared about me so much. I have teachers that wrote me, people in my passing life that wrote me when I was incarcerated to tell me how much potential that I had and how saddened that they were that this had transpired. So the message that I give the young people always is that there are people in your life that love you and that care about you and that want to see you succeed. So don't close them out.
Hi, thank you very much for being here and for sharing your story. My question is whether you have any opinions on how the justice system, speaking of that third pillar, of community, or the system, help in your process or in the restorative justice process or hinder this process for you?
Well, the justice system is evolving like everything else. It just moves very slowly. When I first murdered Tariq in January of 1995, the law in California had just changed from where you can try a juvenile as an adult at 16, and they dropped it to 14. I was the first 14-year-old in California to be tried under that law and sentenced in adult court and sentenced to prison. At that time, the justice system was more focused on lock them up, throw away the key, because they felt like locking people up is what kept the community safe, basically. If you remove bad people once they did an act away from the community, then the community would be safe. now that we realize that that's not necessarily the case at all, I feel like the legal system is slowly trying to turn around and look at a different approach to solving these difficult problems, because the problems are a little more dynamic. When I left prison in 2019, prison had changed dramatically from a more punitive environment to one where they have more self-help groups, especially with Jerry Brown. I'm not a politician, I'm not advocating people vote for anybody, especially when Jerry Brown got re-elected, and then Gavin Newsom came in and he kind of buttressed those programs that Jerry Brown has set up. So I do think the system is changing, and I think a lot of that is due to people like yourselves and people like the Khamisa Foundation who do this work, and they network tirelessly to make sure that our communities benefit from the systems that we have.